Thank you, Wendy. We're so excited to have everyone here tonight. My name is Kasey Henry, and I am a regional leader for the South Central region. So that is Texas and Oklahoma. And I don't know if any of you are from Houston that are here with us tonight, but there is a thunderstorm going on. So you might hear thunder in the background. And if I disappear and don't come back, Wendy, Martha, you guys might need to pick it up for me. So just a heads up. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone of some basic Zoom instructions. Please keep yourself muted at all times during our presentation, except of course when we go into the breakout groups. We do have the chat active, so please use that to talk to everybody, introduce yourselves, ask questions, share any links that you think are meaningful and relevant to the conversation. And then of course you have the option of speaker view versus gallery view in Zoom. So if you prefer to have speaker view, you can go up to the little view icon and change it there. And if you want to see everybody's faces, then you can put it on gallery view. For those of you that are joining Together Women Rise for the first time, please know how glad we are to have you all with us. Welcome. Together Women Rise is a powerful community of women and allies dedicated to achieving global gender equality. We have hundreds of local chapters across the US where members learn about gender equality issues, give grants to organizations that empower women and girls in low-income countries, and build community to forge meaningful connections with each other and with women and girls around the world. Our book club is another way to engage in our mission, to learn about global gender equality issues, and to experience community with others who care about making the world a better place for women and girls. For more information on our book club and all Together Women Rise programs, please visit our website at togetherwomenrise.org. Martha, I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Martha Thomson. I am a book club committee member and also a co-leader of the chapter 3 in Charleston, or Charleston 3 chapter, although tonight I'm in Wayne, Pennsylvania, where I spend the summers. So I'm happy to see everybody tonight, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion and to hearing our speaker. Yesterday, if you didn't know, June 20th was World Refugee Day, a day that shines a light on the rights, needs, and dreams of refugees. In honor of World Refugee Day, tonight we'll be discussing A Hope More Powerful Than the Sea by Melissa Fleming, which those of you that have been able to read the book so far know what a powerful story she had to share. Just to give an overview of how we're going to run the evening, first we have a speaker, Tara Sutton, who'll be joining us. And after that, you'll have a chance to ask Tara some questions about her work as a documentary filmmaker, as a journalist, and also as a member of the, oh gosh, I am so sorry, the Collateral Repair Project. And so please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I will get them from the chat and we'll ask them to Tara after our discussion. After that, we'll break out into groups to talk about the book and we'll do a wrap up following that. And be sure to stay to the end because we're going to be having a giveaway for some books for our next discussion. So with that, I'll hand it back to Kasey.
Thanks, Martha. I am so excited to introduce our speaker tonight. Tara Sutton is a journalist and a documentary filmmaker whose work in conflict zones has won many awards, including an Amnesty Media Award, Commonwealth Broadcasting Association's Rolls-Royce Award for Exceptional News Feature, and a two-time finalist for the Rory Peck Award for Bravery in Journalism. She brings years of Middle East and refugee experience with her as she has lived in Iraq and Jordan and covered post-conflict issues from Liberia to Colombia. Tara is also a founding board member for the Collateral Repair Project, which has been awarded both a featured grant and a sustained grant from Together Women Rise. Collateral Repair Project is located in Jordan, where it assists the most vulnerable refugees of war, including those from Iraq and Syria. We are so pleased to have Tara here today to talk about her experiences, the refugee crisis, and the work of the Collateral Repair Project. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and talk to you all and just see some new faces. You know, I feel like I've been shut in my house, not seeing anyone or doing much. So this is like very exciting. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get myself off the screen because that will distract me. Anyway, yeah, so I'm very happy to be here. I believe I spoke to a chapter of Dining for Women about, I think in around 2014, when everybody was together in somebody's house, which also looked like a lot of fun. And I think that your group is amazing. And I wish they had it in Canada, which is where I am talking to you from. So yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am a journalist and filmmaker and a mother of two. So now probably a lot more safe stories than I used to cover when I began my career. So I ended up covering the war in Iraq for 2 years. I went there in 2003, right as the statue fell, and ended up staying for 2 more years, covering really the effects that the war had on civilians, primarily women and children, because that was always really what interested me about conflict. It wasn't so much the action and the fighting of it, but I was just curious about what it would be like to be a normal person and have your world suddenly become so unnormal and so strange. So I spent a lot of time there, and I really became very attached to the people that I met. Iraqis, like the Syrians you see in the book, have this just incredible warmth and hospitality. And I think again the book portrayed very well how when you are in these really difficult situations, and I was never in a situation anywhere near as treacherous as hers, but the camaraderie that can happen even between strangers, and that bond that you share. So I ended up feeling very just sort of moved by the people that I had met there, and I really could not forget the situation that they were in. And so after I had a couple of kids, I ended up marrying an Iraqi, which didn't last that long, but don't get married in a war zone, ladies, bad idea. Anyway, I had a couple of children and was living in Jordan. And I couldn't stop thinking about the war that was going on next door in the country next door, which then was like, it was in Iraq then, it hadn't started in Syria. And so I thought maybe there was some way that I could help the refugees, because I don't know, I felt almost like a sense of obligation because I had witnessed their story so much. I had also, I was getting sort of like career goals met and all this, winning prizes for telling these stories about the worst things that had happened in these people's lives, which doesn't always feel that great. Like on the one hand, you think, okay, I really want to get their story out there, but then you're also sometimes feel just like, am I being a parasite? It's ethically something that I always really wrestled with. And so I felt very much that I wanted to, now that I was in safety, be able to assist other people who were, who didn't have the choices that I had, to be able to come and go as I pleased. So I started looking around on the internet in Jordan, and I heard about this very small charity called the Collateral Repair Project, which at the time was operating out of a townhouse in a neighborhood of Amman, Jordan, which can, definitely what you would call the other side of the tracks. And this instantly kind of struck me as something different, because a lot of charity organizations are in the much nicer parts of town, like all the UN agencies are often where you'll find all the embassies, right? Because they think a lot more about, I think, the comfort of their expat staff than they think about the people that are trying to reach them, who might need to take a taxi ride that will cost, a lot of their dwindling money to get there, to then be able to register and get the things that they can, whatever charity is being given out. And so I thought, this is interesting. This place is in Hashmi Al Shmali, which is this very bustling, it's a great neighborhood, but it's not somewhere where you ever find foreigners. And I was like, who is this American woman that's pitched up here? Like, this is somebody different. And so I went to visit her, and I got lost like 4 times on the way. And I found this woman in her 60s with hair like down to her butt. She called herself an old hippie. And she basically had started the Collateral Repair Project with money from a group of Facebook friends, and people would send her money and she would just give it out to people, because she knew that that was the neighborhood that the refugees were in. And it was so different from anything else that I had seen. You get a little bit jaded, I think, in my line of work, because you'll see a lot of charities and it just feels often that there's a lot of money is wasted on business cards and like first class trips and conferences and all of this stuff that they do. And so I was really impressed with just how grassroots it was. And she was working with an Iraqi man called Ghazwan, who was a refugee himself. And they would just sort of feel people would just knock on their door at any time of the day or night. And whatever money they had, after they would do a home visit to make sure that the people were the neediest, because that was sort of always the mandate, to help the most vulnerable. So they would see people's houses and they can tell by that, like, it's awful, but you'd see things like, do they still have the gold? The kids still have their gold? Is there a television? Because you can see when people have sold everything that they have. That was sort of our mandate to step in, not because we didn't want to help other people, but there was a limited amount of money. So the idea was to help the people who were really, really the most needy. So Sasha eventually, I think, kind of burned out, and she, after 3.5 years or 2 years, moved back to Oregon. And then Amanda, who is now our CEO, who is an American woman who is married to a Jordanian and has 2 kids and lives there, and came like me as a volunteer, ended up taking over. And with the help of organizations such as yours, and a lot of we get grants from really amazing places, and they're usually smaller grants from sort of community groups or people that really feel a sort of connection to the work that the Collateral Repair Project does. And it's just grown and grown and grown. And from the original sort of 15 families a month that Sasha was helping, now we help 800 families a month. The primary goal of CRP is to help people to meet their basic needs. And then once those basic needs are met, is to provide a sense of community, which is extremely beneficial for people's mental health. I think you could see that in the book, how they, as refugees, they took such comfort when they would meet other people from Syria, or even in Dua's case, when she meets a family from Egypt, when she's in Greece. That sense of people sort of speaking their language and understanding what they've gone through is really important to people, because we always think about the fact that they've lost their home and their source of income in their country, but it's like they also lose all of those connections, right? All your neighbors that would have watched your kids, and the guy at the corner store that you knew, like all of that network that we all rely on and that kind of makes us feel like we are who we are, is gone as soon as you become a refugee. So at CRP, sort of initially, if a family comes to us, we will find out, and often it's, they are down to their last $40. They've got a couple of kids, the rent is due, they're wondering how they're going to eat. So we will take away that, we will help them. We can give them also kitchen kits and sleep mattresses to be able to sleep in the house. And because sometimes you go into their house and they're sleeping on their suitcases, like they don't have blankets or beds or any cooking equipment. So we provide that, and we provide them with food vouchers so that they can know that they're going to be able to feed their family. And then usually 2 or 3 months after that, once they kind of calm down, they start to come to what the community center that we have, which our offices are in a building that also has, it's grown. It's now 2 houses. It used to be 1. And there's all kinds of things going on there, from yoga to English classes to computer classes. There's teen groups. There's summer camp for kids. There's an after school program. And that's where people start to just sort of get out of their heads a little bit and start to learn things and meet people. And for mothers, they get to have their kids taken care of for a few hours. And it's really such a happy place. I wish you guys could see it, because you go in there and there might be like some guy that's like, look at my painting, and they'll be in a painting class. And then you'll go next door and there'll be like a bunch of kids learning, a refugee who was a dentist will be teaching a class to little kids about how to clean their teeth. And people usually start to want to, once they've been a beneficiary of CRP for a few months, they usually start to want to give back. So they'll be like, well, I do this, or I'm a teacher. And so a lot of the beneficiaries begin volunteering there. It's almost like a big YMCA, so it just gives people a place where they can come and meet other people. A lot of friendships are made there. And I think that people always just say they like coming there because they feel like it's a place in a sometimes hostile environment to refugees where they just feel that, they're cared about. And we always provide snacks and tea and all of these sort of creature comforts to just try to make it feel not just feel welcoming and like it's a place for them. There's also we have outings for the teenagers and all these things to try to give people like a little bit of pleasure and things to look forward to. So in 2012, after helping, the Iraqi refugees began coming in 2006, really. It was the first few years, it wasn't so bad, but once the civil war started in Iraq, that's when a lot of people started coming. And then the Syrians came in 2014, and that was just mind-blowing because of the amounts of people. I would wake up in the morning and on the cover of the newspaper, it would say 12,000 Syrians crossed into the kingdom last night. And then the next would be 8,000, the next would be 14. And all these people were walking in on foot because they were not allowed to leave at that stage. So they had to be smuggled through this sort of 5-kilometer hilly area between Syria and Jordan because the government didn't want to let them leave. And so sometimes they'd be shot at as they were leaving, and they would just arrive with nothing, often all they could carry. They couldn't, if they had been carrying anything, they usually would have dropped it, and they would just be, arrive with the clothes on their back. So that became a real, that was, I think, the most difficult time for people who were working, were trying to help refugees at that time, because it was just so sudden. There were just suddenly so many people. The population in Jordan, it went from I think in the first year, 300,000 people arrived, and the population of the country was only 8 million. And now there's, I think, 1.5 million refugees there. So the population of the country went up considerably in a couple of years. And so we are still really in the same situation. We hope that our families will get resettled, which is when, they're considered vulnerable enough to go to Australia or the States or Canada or somewhere in Europe, but the chance of that is so slim. That's probably 1 in every 1,000 families that happens to. So the rest are in this kind of dangerous limbo. In about around the time that book is set, we did have some of the men of certain families going to make that journey to try to get to Europe. We always would discourage them because obviously it was just so dangerous. And for the most part, the people that we assist couldn't really afford it, which was, I guess, a good thing because it is so dangerous. But it's, I'm so grateful that for you for helping us, because it's definitely not on the front of the papers anymore, and people have sort of forgotten about it. But, those countries are still not stable, and who would want to take their family back into that kind of situation? I think that the book gave such a great overview of the pressures and the feelings of people, with Bassem wanting to go back to fight because he's just thinking, well, what's my chance? And that is one of the risks that young refugees face. For girls, the risk is very much early marriage. And you see that a lot in the bigger refugee camps in Zatari, where sometimes, Saudis come in across the border looking for Syrian wives, because Syrian women are known for their beauty in the region. And they'll marry 14-year-old girls. And the family are just, they don't even know what to do, because it's they think, I think they want to believe that this might give the girl a better opportunity, you know what I mean? Because they can't feed her, they can't send her to school. So that the boys tend to go back to fight because they'll get paid a small amount of money. So they feel that they're contributing. And the girls will usually end up being married far too young. And I think that's one of the ways that, I mean, conflict affects men and women differently. And I think for women, it's for men, obviously, they're more likely to be conscripted or made to fight. And obviously that's incredibly dangerous. And then for girls, it's just a narrowing of opportunity because girls, I think for anybody would not want to send their daughter out into an incredibly dangerous situation where gangs of armed young men are roaming the streets. So girls' ability to do anything becomes more and more and more closed off just because it's not safe for them. So they will stop going to school. They will be just stuck at home more and more. I mean, you saw that in Afghanistan, and you see it all over the conflicts that are going on in the Middle East. And so I think that as much as there are problems in the Middle East with the treatment of women, I think that the biggest barrier to women's advancement is the conflict and instability. Because if you, like Jordan, which is a very stable country, you have female politicians, you have female CEOs, you see women in all aspects of life. And then every time a country descends into conflict, women become more and more shut in, and it's like one step forward, two steps backward. And so that's why we try. So we have like a teen girls group that's a dream group to try to, have girls talk about their dreams and keep them from, I guess it's just a sort of mental health service, right? Try to keep them hopeful, because so much of the world becomes shuttered off to them. I think that the book gave such an amazing, I feel like it was the families that we help, like the way that Dua's family was described, and the way they all were in the apartment. I felt like I knew her family so well, because those are exactly what our beneficiaries are like. Like they're such warm and kind people, and you give them something and they want to give you 10 things back. Like so many times you'll go to somebody's house and they have nothing, and then they'll come up after and they'll try to give you like a keychain or I don't know, they're just the kindest people, which makes it so heartbreaking that they're going through this. And I think the sort of, it's like their health deteriorates, and it's like, obviously it's like a number of things, but you can't really put your finger on anything. And I think mostly it's just long-term stress, right? So then, like in Dua's case, she's not eating. We have a lot of people that start suffering from diabetes, and I don't know, it's like this look you can see in their faces. It's like their skin is sort of pale. They have these like tics almost, right? Like the sort of like their eye, just from constant stress. And no way to really get out of it. It's like this endless limbo. But I think that once you sort of know them, it's really hard to not want to help. I mean, that's what's kind of kept me going now. I've just realized when I was writing down the notes for tonight, I was like, CRP started in 2006. I was like, that's 15 years. I in my mind, I'm always like, oh yeah, it's like 3 or 4 years old. Like it all still seems recent, but to realize that some people in that neighborhood have been waiting there for 15 years, it's insane. I mean, it's you can tell what's going on in the region politically by who shows up at our door. In 2014, suddenly there were all these Christians from Mosul, which is in northern Iraq, which is where ISIS took control of the city, right? So we just got this influx, and then somewhere gets a bit better, and they all try to go home. And that's another thing, though, that I think is often very misrepresented in I don't know if it's mainstream media, but there's this sense that everybody is trying to, come to our countries because they're rich and they're just trying to freeload. But most people just want to go home. Like they don't want to leave their home. They're forced to leave. They love where they're from. Even if to us, we'd think, well, there's so many problems there, but it's where their culture is. It's like where everybody they know is. It's where they grew up, and they feel very attached to it. They don't want to go somewhere else. They just have no choice. I think you even see that with Dua's family, right? So many things happen and you're just like, you're still there, like you're still there, like they're just hoping they're just keep on hoping it's going to get better. First they're besieged by tanks and they're like, oh, maybe these won't stay that long, and then they try to get to the pharmacy and they nearly die. And eventually they're just like, okay, and it's been almost a year and they're just like, this is not sustainable, but they're not trying to go somewhere else. They want to be at home, I think, like most of us do. But then I think, especially if you have children, you just think, how can I possibly bring up my child in this? I need to give my child the right to a safer, better life. What time is it? I think I've talked too much. I think I'm done. Does anybody have any questions?
We actually do have one question that came up in the chat. It is, what can we do to help refugees beyond donating to groups like RISE or the Collateral Repair Project? What can we do? What can we do to help the individuals that are still in the refugee camps? And what can we do to help refugees that have come to the US or Canada?
I mean, that's a tricky question. The best thing to do to help refugees is to not vote for people who will create conflicts. Like that's the refugees are created because of wars. So the best thing to stop the problem is to, I guess, try to not have countries go to war, which I think is bigger than any of us necessarily. But that's the real root cause. And then I think that, if there are people who are open, if there's any politicians that that are open to accepting larger numbers of refugees, I think that refugees make the best immigrants because they are just so hardworking. They're so grateful to have been given a chance that they are definitely people that will make any country better. If you look at so many stories of businesses, you'll see that in the background of like, oh, came as a refugee. And I don't know, I just think that, I guess if you can be the person that gets yourself somewhere else, you're already kind of exceptional. And then it really, unfortunately, in places like Jordan and in any of the countries that are refugees, it is financial, right? Because you have people who don't have there's no way that 3 million, there's, I think currently in the Middle East region, 5 million refugees. 5 million refugees are not going to all find other countries to live in. So they basically have to be kept fed and housed until their countries are safe. And now in Jordan, there's like certain people who are allowed to work, but the thing is all of these countries are already poor, right? And so if they were suddenly to let everybody work, then their own population, which is already kind of like grumbling a bit, because it's like, well, why do they get this and they get this and we don't get that? It's difficult. So they just need financial support. I wish there was it's not one of those situations where you can be like, teach a man to fish, because it's like they don't have a lake. So like, even if you teach them to fish, there's nowhere for them to fish. So they just need, I think support, and financial support is sort of the easiest thing. CRP has a program, I'm not sure who you talk to about it, but where you can connect with a refugee and teach them English. So you donate like an hour of your time, because people are dying to speak English because they feel that will help them if they are resettled, and just that it's like, the sort of language of the world. So that's something that if you have the time, and I think people really enjoy it, because you are talk to the same person every week, and you can build a sort of cross-cultural, cross the ocean friendship.
So that's something we can do by Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
That's been going on even since before.
Wow.
So it's like you're just doing a pro bono tutoring or conversational class.
Neat. That's really great.
Yeah, so that's like something, it's hard because I hate just saying like give money because it just sounds like, I know that people want to sort of, people give money, but there's also like, well, can't we do something else? But it's just tricky because really
Yeah,
it's
so
just a
to see.
matter of keeping them supported, you know what I mean?
Mhm. We have another question. Alina Durham is making a film adaptation of the book, and question is wondering, you as a filmmaker, have you had any input or have you been involved in that process?
No, I haven't. I didn't even know that she was going to be making that film. That's an interesting choice. I think. But I mean, I felt that Melissa Fleming did a really good job. And I think when I read who she was, I realized that she's a UN spokesperson, which makes me think she spent a lot of time and is really familiar with all of the issues. And so I feel like, if she sticks to that script, if she keeps to those facts, it would probably be good. I just think there's a lot. I feel that it's very, I don't think that Arabs are often portrayed very well in the media. There's a tendency to sort of go along these stereotypes. And I thought that the book really did a good job of sort of unraveling those. You realize that like, okay, women are not all oppressed. They're listened to. The situation can be bad, but there's also a lot of respect and admiration for women, and they're tough there, because I think so often the men are seen as bad guys and the women are seen as these victims, which is obviously not true of any group of people at all, right? Like every group of people has all types of people in it. So I would hope that, I think this is actually a really good film to be made because it is a different sort of story where they're not terrorists.
Definitely. Right. Another question came asking if you could speak to the intensive vetting that refugees go through. Because typically, refugees are the least likely immigrants to be a security threat.
Yeah, I know, right? I find it stresses them out so much. They have to go through so many interviews. And the other thing that really stresses them out is that there's a translator there, and they often feel that they don't trust the translator because there's a sort of, they all come from countries where they don't trust their government at all. And anybody that's working with the government is thought to be some sort of spy or, secret police, or so they get very nervous because they're like, well, why is this person there in a position of power? And how do I know that they're translating what I say correctly? Maybe they're not going to like me. Maybe they're going to. So I think that that's a little bit overkill. Yeah, I wish that it wasn't like that, because I think that you're taking people who have already gone through so much trauma, and then you're kind of making them prove themselves. It's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. I think that we have a problem in all of our institutions with this sort of like make the victim prove. It's like, trying to get a sexual assault charge. It's like you have to explain what happened to you over and over again. It's like, I think it's pretty obvious why somebody would leave a country. I know an Iraqi friend of mine who was trying to come to Canada said that at the end of his interview, he was asked if he knew where any mass graves were. And I was just like, and I said, what did you say? And he said, well, I didn't say anything, but in my head, and he said in his head, he was thinking, yeah, in my garden. Like, it's so insulting. It's like, yeah, I mean, why would you know where a mass grave is? Right. So I do think that there's a lot of, I don't know, dehumanization that goes on in our sort of like, whoever is interviewing people needs a little bit of compassion training, I think, and why are they looking at everybody as if they're a potential threat? I don't know.
Right. Hopefully that will change down the road.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Another question came, can the refugees figure out how to make money with developing businesses like bakeries, farmers, pottery within the refugee community?
Yes,
and what
definitely.
about getting kids educated? Another question too. How does that work?
Okay, we pay for kids to go to school at CRP. There's a lot of organizations that help the children stay in school. So there's, I didn't really properly explain, but for example, in Jordan, there are refugees that are in two big camps. One of them is called Zaatari. That's really famous. It has about 200,000 people in it. And it's basically like its own kind of container tent city in the desert. There's another one called Azraq that has about 80,000 people. But what we help are urban refugees, because a lot of people don't want to go into the camps, which is understandable when you see them, because they're city people and they're like, I don't want to live in a tent in the desert. I'm used to living in a city. Like they think that they'll be able to get there and get work. And then they sort of realize that there are all these obstacles in their way. So CRP helps urban refugees. And actually that's 60% of all the refugees in Jordan are not living in camps. They do definitely do a lot of work. A lot of men work under the table, but the problem is they get really badly paid. And if they're mistreated, they have no recompense, and what can they do? Also, if they get caught on the third time, they're driven back across the border to Syria. So that's with their family. So that's not a great, they do it, but it's pretty fraught. Again, there's a lot of like laborers and painters, but a lot of women. We have something called the Hope Workshop where we train women to make all different kinds of things. I mean, some of them already know how to make things and will lead groups, but and that stuff is sold at various markets and street fairs around Jordan. I'm not quite sure. I think somebody's trying to work on figuring out how to, sell it internationally, but I don't think we're quite there yet. So there are a lot of groups. There's actually an amazing, it's not CRP related, but this Italian priest brought over like some fashion designers from Italy and trained these Iraqi girls to make just amazing clothes. So they're like really high-end stuff, but using a lot of their traditional sewing techniques and fabric. So there are a lot of really neat things going on from all different groups, but it's still kind of all piecemeal, right? It's like, everybody in it is hoping that they can leave. They're hoping that, there's no sense of like you're building something that's going to last forever, because everybody is hoping that it won't be forever. Although if we look at there's a Palestinian camp in Jordan that's been there since 1958. So.
Wow. Do the women sell the items they've made themselves, or does somebody else sell them in the market? We sell them, and then they have a number on them, and so everybody gets paid for, like each, who made what, and then I don't know if they give the money to the person or if it's pooled. Okay. I'm not sure, but they definitely, who made, they know who made what, and that's something they like. It's fun too, right? Because it's like just they come, they do their sewing and drink coffee and gossip and just get a chance to hang out with other women. Have sort of a normal life.
Mm-hmm. And then there's like catering initiatives, because man, those women can cook. So there's a lot of different groups sometimes that there's actually an amazing one in Lebanon that isn't related to us, where she got a food truck and they started cooking and selling it around. First they did catering, and so yeah, there's so much potential. It's just so tricky because you have people that are hoping they won't have to stay there, a country that doesn't want them to get too permanently settled, because they're just like, we got enough of our own problems. Like half of Jordan is Palestinians. A third of the people in Lebanon now are Syrian. Full third of their population is Syrian. So and they're already countries that are not economically well off. I mean, Jordan definitely gets kickbacks, I think, from the UN for hosting people. So I think there's more of an incentive for them to do it. But
that kind of leads into another question that we have. What can we do to support countries like Jordan, who are supporting so many refugees from different parts of the Middle East?
Yeah, well, I think that it's like by donating to organizations that are helping refugees. And I think I feel that, just a sort of a awareness of where the brunt of the people are being hosted. Like, I don't think people realize how, what a strain it's putting on those countries and how they've welcomed them all in. I think it was eventually Jordan stopped taking Syrians, but for the first 2 years, like if you walked across the border, they would give you a blanket, they'd give you a glass of water, they'd drive you to this sort of like holding center, and you were welcome to go there, which I think that, with everything that's going on in terms of people's feelings about immigration and refugees is pretty astounding. Like, these are countries that really don't have a lot, and they're doing this. I don't know, it makes me feel kind of embarrassed. I'm like, we're like, okay, you can come. I mean, granted, it's like not our neighbor, but still.
If you've got time, we have a few more questions for you. Do you have time for another question or two? One is, do you have any specific projects targeting reproductive health, the health needs of girls?
Oh,
At
CRP, no, we do not. We do not do medical, we have Doctors Without Borders that we would refer people to.
Mhm.
But we don't have any kind of medical. The furthest thing we've gotten to medical is dentistry, like giving people, but we don't have, I'm not sure if the teen group or would talk about that. I mean, I know that there is reproductive health. UNHCR has a branch that women can go to, but that's not something that CRP deals with.
Mhm. How do refugees find CRP?
Word of mouth.
Just word of mouth.
Everybody, I mean, we get we're on Facebook where everybody just talks to each other. And so, and it's in the neighborhood. So most people, when they arrive, will go to this neighborhood because rent is cheap and it's where people they know will be. It's kind of like that neighborhood in Cairo that, what was it called? Gazamia or whatever, where Dua and her family were living. There ended up being sort of neighborhoods that people go to, because the problem is that then the landlords start price gouging, which is one of the really horrible things that's sort of come out of that. Although I guess it's not surprising, because there's just suddenly such a demand for apartments, right? So they just start getting worse and worse places for more and more money. So yeah, they hear about it from their friends usually and show up.
Is there one refugee situation in the world that's growing now, or where it's the most dire situation, let's say?
I think that the Rohingya refugee crisis is still really severe. I think that the Syrian refugee crisis continues to be. I just think it's fallen off of it's not in the news anymore, but I just think that there's limited resources and a lot of people with nowhere to go. And it's just not news, but it's still. Colombia has a terrible refugee problem, but it's inside the country. I actually did a film about that many years ago, because there's still so much fighting that all of these displaced, mainly women, because their husbands have been killed, come to Bogota. And there's about 2.5 million women there. And the problem is they're mostly, because they come from these sort of really remote areas, they were mostly married very young, they have a lot of children, they have no education, and suddenly their breadwinner is gone. And so that is pretty terrible. But it's not, I mean, I guess they're not really considered refugees because they're internally displaced, but it has it has the same, just the same tragic consequences.
Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We really appreciate all you shared with us and answering so many questions. And
I'm happy to answer your questions. This is obvious, it's so close to my heart, and so it always makes me happy to just share what I know with more kindred spirits who care about the world and women in the world. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. We hope you'll stay.
And I'm really glad I got to read that book. I have 1 hour left. I listened to it on Audible because I was just like driving my kids around, and I was like, I want to read the book before I talk, and it's so good.
Good. Well, I hope you'll stay if you want to stay for the discussion. And also right now, I'm going to pass it back to Kasey. She has a
Sure.
poem that she's going to read.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you, Martha. So this poem is called Home by Warsan Shire, and I'm just sharing some excerpts from it. So if you have time, I would encourage you to read the whole thing. Just search online and read the whole thing. It's really impactful. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats. The boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you, fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought of doing until the blade burnt threats into your neck. And even then, you carried the anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in an airport toilet, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear that you wouldn't be going back. You have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains, beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck, feeding on newspaper, unless the miles traveled means something more than the journey. No one crawls under fences. No one wants to be beaten, pitied. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of the gun, and no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore, unless home told you to quicken your legs. No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave, run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thanks. So the author on that, oh, someone put the name of the poem and the author in the link. Thank you for sharing that. And on that note, Wendy will put us into our breakout groups.
All right, as usual, we offer up a few questions to maybe help start your discussion. Please don't feel that you have to stick to these. They're simply conversation starters if you choose to use them. I'm going to put you into groups of either 4 or 5 individuals. We'll have about, I think we're going to take about 12, 13 minutes and then come back together for a wrap up. Please introduce yourself to each other and discuss the book as the group determines. So I've just put in the chat our suggested questions. You can take a look at them there and you should be able to see those once I create the groups. So enjoy your time together and see you back in about 12 minutes.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good discussion in your group. Before we have our book giveaway, I want to make a few final announcements. On August 11th, that will be our next big read discussion, and we're going to be talking about Shores Beyond Shores, From Holocaust to Hope by Irene Butler. And she will be joining us that evening. So please mark that on your calendar to join us for what promises to be a really interesting discussion. And I discovered this morning that the book is available on Kindle for like $4.99. So it's quite a good price if you're a Kindle reader. I encourage you to get it that way. And then on September 9th, we're going to be reading Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. And please, if you're not a member already of our Goodreads group, please join that because there's always discussions about our books. And also you can find out about the upcoming book club meetings on the upcoming events tab on the RISE website underneath Join Us. So that link for that will be in the chat. So please, you've got some great summer reads ahead of you, and we hope you'll join us in August and then again in September. And now I'm going to hand it back to Wendy for our book giveaway.
So it is available on Audible.
Did everyone hear that? It's also available on Audible.
Great.
Yes.
And please, even if you don't get a chance to read the book, please come anyway. It's not specifically a discussion about the book. We will likely not have small breakout groups. It is more to come and hear Irene's story. She will be interviewed by Chris Holloway, who was our special speaker a few book club events ago. She was the writer of Monique and the Mango Rains, if you were able to see her event. Chris was the co-author. Chris and her husband, John, were the co-author with Irene. This is the book, in case, just show it to you. I also want to tell you that there were a lot of links in tonight's chat, and you can save all of those. If you open up the chat and you go down to the very bottom, you'll see 3 little dots. There's a file, word file, and then to the right, there's 3 little dots. Click on that and click on Save Chat. And then it will appear in your downloads on your computer, and you can go back and access any of the links that we put in the chat, from names of books, the poem, Tara's films. There's just lots of good stuff in the chat tonight. So we're going to do it a little differently tonight. Sorry, no prize wheel. I am going to ask, instead, we are just going to choose from those who are still participating. There's 33 of you. We're going to give away 3 books, so you got a good chance. And I'm going to ask either Kasey or Martha if you want to give me, I have the list of participants, and if you want to give me a number on the list, the first person, the 10th person, the 30th person, any number between 1 and 33, and I'll try and count quickly.
Let's go with 12.
All right. All right, not counting me. The 12th person is Jenny Blakeney. And Jenny is our new executive administrative coordinator at Together Women Rise. She just started on the last month, and so awesome. So Jenny Blakeney gets the first one. All right, Martha, you want to pick a number?
I'm going to double that and say 24.
Okay, so Jenny's 12. 24 is Mary Gristic. Am I saying that right, Mary?
No, it's okay. Nobody can pronounce
I'm
it.
so sorry.
No, it's okay. Grease a deck, like to grease the deck of a ship. Grease a deck.
Mary,
I
I've
was
seen
just
you on
Mary G. Mary G
I've seen
is
you on
fine.
so many
Thank you.
events, and I have not known how to pronounce
okay.
your name. All right,
It's okay.
Mary, you will get the second book, and we have one more. Mary, why don't you pick a number between 1 and 33, and I will give it to the next person.
How about 19? Oh, am I supposed to do it?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I was asking you,
Okay.
Mary.
Mary G. Mary G. Okay. There's a lot of Marys.
I know.
How about 19? I don't know. I'm just 19.
Linda Wagner. Isn't this much? It's kind of nice when everybody's here. Linda, I'll be sending you a copy of Linda, Mary, and Jenny. I'll be sending you a copy of Shores Beyond Shores. Please, please, please reach out to your friends. This is really a very, very unique opportunity we have. Irene is well-known peace activist. She would likely charge a considerable amount of money, but is doing this for free for us because of the connection with Chris Holloway. And we're just really, really fortunate to have someone like her come and speak to our members. Please invite a friend and spread it around in your chapters. Love to have a good crowd for Irene and Chris.
Okay, and I think that's it for tonight, right, Wendy? Was there anything else on the agenda?
I just want to say thank you to Kasey and Martha. You did an amazing job tonight. Tara has left, but loved hearing her discussion. And that poem was so powerful. Thank you, Kasey, for finding that and sharing that. You guys did awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.